Good evening, everybody. It's lovely to see you. Hi, everybody. Hi, Anita. Hi, Dunya. Hi, Gerdi. Hi, Gorana. It's lovely to see you this evening. I will turn the music down a little bit in a minute, maybe. I'm on tonight, and we are going to carry on where we left off from last night when I was in the theatre. Let me just do this because this is annoying me. Where I was in the theatre and I was missing one last page actually yesterday evening. So tonight we are going to be finishing off the 150th night, I think it was, and then moving straight on into the 151st night, and then potentially reading the 152nd night. I'm in another space again. If you remember very far back when we started reading in, was it March? I used to read in my office, and this is actually my office, and I put some things up so that it kind of looks all nice. And one of the candles isn't burning actually. I don't know why that is. Let me see what's happened here, because I love my candles burning. Oh, there it is. It's just not a very happy burning candle. And I have some incense tonight going on. And yes, I hope you are all sitting very comfortably and are very well on this kind of cold Viennese evening, actually. Let me just, thank you very much for the likes and the hearts already. This cold Viennese evening, suddenly we went from 24 degrees right all the way down to 9 the other day, and it rained furiously. And then today, at least, we were back up at 15 degrees. But there we go. I hope you can all see me well. Let me just turn this down a little bit, actually. There we go. We lean this over. And as you know, I love this music, so I just love actually having it going on in the background. So, tonight we are going to start off where we left off yesterday, which was the fox and the crow. So, I hope you are all sitting very comfortably, and if you are, then let us begin. The fox and the crow. A fox once dwelt in a cave of a certain mountain, and, as often as a cub was born to him and grew stout, he would eat the young one, for he had died of hunger. Had he instead of so doing left the cub alive and bred it by his side and preserved and cherished his issue, yet was this very grievous to him. Now, on the crest of the same mountain, a crow had made his nest, and the fox said to himself, I have a mind to set up a friendship with this crow and make a comrade of him, that he may help me to my daily bread, for he can do in such matters what I cannot. So he drew near the crow's home, and, when he came within the sound of speech, he saluted him and said, O my neighbour, verily a true believer hath two claims upon his true believing neighbour, the right of neighbourliness and the right of al-Islam, our common faith. And know, O my friend, that thou art my neighbour, and thou hast a claim upon me, which it behoveth me to observe, the more that I have long been thy neighbour. Also, there be implanted in my breast a store of love to thee, which bideth me speak thee fair, and obligeth me to solicit thy brothership. What sayest thou in reply? Answered the crow, Verily, the truest speech is the best speech, and haply thou speakest with thy tongue that which is not in thy heart. So I fear lest thy brotherhood be only of the tongue. Outward, and thy enmity be in the heart inward. For that thou art the eater, and I the eaten, and faring apart were apter to us than friendship and fellowship. What then maketh thee seek that which thou mayest not gain, and desire what may not be done, seeing that I be of the bird kind, and thou be of the beast kind? Verily, this thy proffered brotherhood may not be made, neither were it seemly to make it. Rejoined the fox, of a truth, whoso knoweth the abiding place of excellent things maketh better choice in what he chooseth therefrom. So perchance he may advantage his brethren. And indeed I should love to woe near thee, and I have sued for thine intimacy, to the end that we may help each other to our several objects, and success shall surely wait upon our amity. I have a many tales of the goodliness of true friendship, which I will relate to thee, if thou wish the relating. Answered the crow, thou hast my leave to let me hear thy communication. So tell thy tale, and relate it to me, that I may hearken to it, and weigh it, and judge of thine intent thereby. Rejoined the fox, hear then, O my friend, that which is told of a flea and a mouse, and which beareth out what I have said to thee. Asked the crow, how so? And the fox answered, they tell this tale of the flea and the mouse. Once upon a time, a mouse dwelt in the house of a merchant who owned much merchandise and great store of monies. One night, a flea took shelter in the merchant's carpet bed and, finding his body soft and being thirsty, drank of his blood. The merchant was awakened by the smart of the bite, and sitting up, called to his slave girls and serving men. So they hastened to him, and tucking up their sleeves, fell to searching for the flea. But as soon as the bloodsucker was aware of the search, he turned to flee, and, coming on the mouse's home, entered it. When the mouse saw him, she said to him, what bringeth thee in to me, thou who art not of my nature, nor of my kind, and who canst not be assured of safety from violence, or of not being expelled with roughness and ill usage? Answered the flea, of a truth, I took refuge in thy dwelling to save me from slaughter, and I have come to thee, seeking thy protection, and on no wise coveting thy house. Nor shall any mischief betide thee from me to make thee leave thy home. Nay, I hope right soon to repay thy favours to me with all good, and then shalt thou see and praise the issue of my words. And when the mouse heard the speech of the flea, and Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 151st night, she said, it have reached me, O auspicious king, that when the mouse heard the words of the flea, she said, if the case be as thou dost relate and describe, then be at thine ease here, for naught shall befall thee save the reign of peace and safety, nor shall aught betide thee but what shall joy thee and shall not annoy thee, nor shall it annoy me. I will lavish on thee my affections without stint, and do not thou regret having lost the merchant's blood, nor lament for thy subsistence from him, but be content with that subsistence thou canst obtain, for indeed that is the safer for thee. And I have heard, O flea, that one of the gnomic poets saith as follows in these couplets: I have fared content in my solitude, with whatever befell, and led of life ease. On a water draught and a bite of bread, coarse salt and a gown of tattered frieze, Allah might, and he pleased, give me easiest life, but with what so pleaseth him, self I please. Now, when the flea heard these words of the mouse, he rejoined, I hearken to thy charge, and I submit myself to obey thee, nor have I power to gainsay thee, till life be fulfilled in this righteous intention. Replied the mouse, pure intention sufficeth to sincere affection. So the tie of love arose and was knitted between them twain, and after this the flea used to visit the merchant's bed by night, and not exceed in his diet, and house him by day in the hole of the mouse. Now it came to pass one night, the merchant brought home great store of dinars, and began to turn them over. When the mouse heard the chink of the coin, she put her head out of her hole, and fell to gazing at it, till the merchant laid it under his pillow, and went to sleep. When she said to the flea, seest thou not the proffered occasion and the great good fortune? Hast thou any device to bring us our desire of yonder dinars? Quoth the flea, verily, it is not good that one strive for aught, unless he be able to win his will, because if he lack ability thereto, he falleth into that which he should avoid, and he attaineth not his wish by reason of his weakness, albeit he use all power of cunning, like the sparrow, which picketh up a grain and falleth into the net, and is caught by the fowler. Thou hast no strength to take the dinars and to transport them out of this house, nor have I force sufficient to do this. On the contrary, I could not carry a single ducat of them. So what hast thou to do with them? Quoth the mouse, I have made me for my house these 70 openings, whence I may go out at my desire, and I have set apart a place strong and safe for things of price. And if thou can contrive to get the merchant out of the house, I doubt not of success, and so be that fate aid me. Answered the flea, I will engage to get him out of the house for thee. And going to the merchant's bed, bit him a fearful bite, such as he had never before felt, then fled to a place of safety where he had no fear of the man. So the merchant awoke and sought for the flea, but finding him not, lay down again on his other side. Then the flea bit him a second time more painfully than before. So he lost patience and, leaving his bed, went out and lay down on the bench before his door, and slept there, and awoke not till the morning. Meanwhile, the mouse came out, and fell to carrying the dinars into her hole, till she left not a single one. And when day dawned, the merchant began to suspect the folk, and fancy all manners of fancies. And, continued the fox, know thou, O wise and experienced crow, with the clear-seeing eyes, that I tell thee this only to intent that thou mayest reap the recompense of thy kindness to me, even as the mouse reaped the reward of her kindness to the flea. For see how he repaid her and requited her with the goodliest of requitals. Said the crow, it lies with the benefactor to show benevolence, or not to show it. Nor is it incumbent on us to entreat kindly one who seeketh a connection that entaileth separation from kith and kin. If I show thee favour, who art any foe by kind, I am the cause of cutting myself off from the world, and thou, O fox, art full of wiles and guiles. Now, those whose characteristics are craft and cunning may not be trusted upon oath, and whoso is not to be trusted upon oath, in him there is no good faith. The tidings lately reached me of thy treacherous dealing with one of thy comrades, which was a wolf, and how thou didst deceive him until thou leddest him into destruction by thy perfidy and stratagems. And this thou didst after he was one of thine own kind, and thou hadst long consorted with him. Yet didst thou not spare him? And if thou couldst deal thus with thy fellow, which was one of thine own kind, how can I have trust in thy truth? And what would be thy dealing with thy foe of other kind than thy kind? Nor can I compare thee and me, but with the saker and the birds. How so? Asked the fox. Answered the crow, they relate this tale of the saker and the birds. There was once a saker who was a cruel tyrant, and Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. And now, when it was the 102nd night, I'm going to take a sip of water. Scheherazade said, excuse me, it hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the crow pursued. They relate that there was once a saker who was a cruel tyrant in the days of his youth, so that the raveners of the air and the scavengers of the earth feared him, none being safe from his mischief. And many were the haps and mishaps of his tyranny and his violence. For this saker was even in the habit of oppressing and injuring all other birds. As the years passed over him, he grew feeble, and his force failed him, so that he was often famished. But his cunning waxed stronger with the waning of his strength, and he redoubled his endeavours and determined to be present at the general assembly of the birds, that he might eat of their oughts and leavings. So in this manner he fed by fraud instead of feeding by fierceness and force. And thou, O fox, art like this. If thy might fail thee, thy sleight faileth thee not, and I doubt not that thy seeking my society is a fraud to get thy food. But I am none of those who fall to thee and put fist into thy fist, for that Allah hath vouchsafed force to my wings, and caution to my mind, and sharp sight to my eyes. and I know that whoso apeth a stronger than he wearieth himself, and haply cometh to ruin. Wherefore I fear for thee, lest, if thou apest stronger than thyself, there befall thee what befell the sparrow. Asked the fox, what befell the sparrow? Allah upon thee, tell me his tale. And the crow began to relate the story of the sparrow and the eagle. I have heard that a sparrow was once flitting over a sheepfold, when he looked at it carefully, and behold, he saw a great eagle swoop down upon a newly yeaned lamb and carry it off in his claws and fly away. Thereupon the sparrow clapped his wings and said, I will do even as this one did. And he waxed proud in his own conceit and mimicked a greater than he. So he flew down forthright and lighted on the back of a fat ram with a thick fleece that was become matted by his lying in his dung and stale till it was like woolen felt. As soon as the sparrow pounced upon the sheep's back, he flapped his wings to fly away. But his feet became tangled in the wool, and however hard he tried, he could not set himself free. While all this was doing, the shepherd was looking on, having seen what had happened with the eagle and afterwards with the sparrow. So he came up to the wee birdie in a rage and seized him. Then he plucked out his winged feathers and, tying his feet with a twine, carried him to his children and threw him to them. What is this? Asked one of them, and he answered, This is he that aped a greater than himself and came to grief. Now thou, O fox, I like this, and I would have thee beware of aping a greater than thou, lest thou perish. This is all I have to say to thee, so fare from me in peace. When the fox despaired of the crow's friendship, he turned away, groaning for sorrow, gnashing teeth upon teeth in his disappointment. And the crow, hearing the sound of weeping and seeing his grief and profound melancholy, said to him, O fox, what dole and dolour make thee gnash thy canines? Answered the fox, I gnash my canines because I find thee a greater rascal than myself. And so saying, he made off to his house and ceased not to fare till he reached his home. Quoth the Sultan, O Shahrazad, how excellent are these thy stories, and how delightsome! Hast thou more of such edifying tales? Answered she, They tell this legend concerning the hedgehog and the wood pigeons. A hedgehog once took up his abode by the side of a date palm, whereon roosted a wood pigeon and his wife that had built their nest there and lived a life of ease and enjoyment. So he said to himself, This pigeon pair eateth of the fruit of the date tree, and I have no means of getting at it, but needs must I find some fashion of tricking them. Upon this he dug a hole at the foot of the palm tree and took up his lodging there, he and his wife. Moreover, he built an oratory beside the hole and went into retreat there and made a show of devotion and edification and renunciation of the world. The male pigeon saw him praying and worshipping, and his heart was softened towards him for his excessive devoutness. So he said to him, How many years hast thou been thus? Replied the hedgehog, during the last 30 years? What is thy food? That which falleth from the palm tree. And what is thy clothing? Prickles. And I profit by their roughness. And why hast thou chosen this for the place rather than another? I chose it and preferred it to all others, that I might guide the erring into the right way and teach the ignorant. I had fancied thy case, quoth the wood pigeon, other than this, but now I see I yearn for that which is with thee. Quoth the hedgehog, I fear lest thy deed contradict thy word, and thou be even as the husband who, when the seed season came, neglected to sow, saying, Verily, I dread lest the days bring me not to my desire, and by making haste to sow, I shall only waste my substance. When harvest time came, and he saw the folk earing their crops, he repented him of what he had lost by his tardiness, and he died of chagrin and vexation. Asked the wood pigeon, What then shall I do that I may be freed from the bonds of the world and cut myself loose from all things save the service of my Lord? Answered the hedgehog, Betake thee to preparing for the next world, and content thyself with a pittance of provision. Quoth the pigeon, How can I do this? I am that a bird, and unable to go beyond the date tree, whereon is my daily bread. And even could I do so, I know of no other place wherein I may won. Quoth the hedgehog, Thou canst shake down of the fruit of the date tree what shall suffice thee and thy wife for a year's provaunt. Then do ye take up your abode in a nest under the trunk, and ye may prayerfully seek to be guided in the right way, and then turn thou to what thou hast shaken down, and transport it all to thy home, and store it up against what time the dates fail. And when the fruits are spent and the delay is longsome upon you, address thyself to total abstinence. Exclaimed the pigeon, Allah requite thee with good for the righteous intention, wherewith thou hast reminded me of the world to come, and hast directed me into the right way. Then he and his wife worked hard at knocking down the dates, till nothing was left on the palm tree, whilst the hedgehog, finding whereof to eat, rejoiced and filled his den with fruit, storing it up for his subsistence, and saying in his mind, When the pigeon and his wife have need of their provision, they will seek it of me, and covet what I have, relying upon my devoutness and abstinence. And from what they have heard of my counsels and admonitions, they will draw near unto me. Then will I make them my prey and eat them. After which I shall have the place and all that drops from the date tree to suffice me. Presently, having shaken down the fruits, the pigeon and his wife descended from the treetop, and finding that the hedgehog had removed all the dates to his own place, said to him, O hedgehog, thou pious preacher and of good counsel, we can find no sign of the dates, and know not what else we shall feed. Replied the hedgehog, Probably the winds have carried them away, but turning from the provisions to the provider is of the essence of salvation. And he, when the mouth corn is cleft, the mouth without victual hath never left. And he gave not over, improving the occasion to them on this wise, and making a show of piety, and cozening them with fine words and false, till they put faith in him and accepted him and entered his den, and had no suspicion of his deceit. Thereupon he sprang to the door and gnashed his teeth, and the wood pigeon, seeing his perfidy manifested, said to him, "What hath tonight to do with yesternight? Knowest thou not that there is a helper for the oppressed? Beware of craft and treachery, lest that mishap befall thee which befell the sharpers who plotted against the merchant." "What was that?" said the hedgehog. Answered the pigeon, "I heard the tale of the merchant and the two sharpers." In a city called Sindar, there was once a very wealthy merchant who made ready his camel loads and equipped himself with goods and set out with his outfit for such a city, purposing to sell it there. Now, he was followed by two sharpers who had made up into bales what merchandise they could get, and, giving out to the merchant that they also were merchants, wended with him by the way. So the halting at the first halting place, they agreed to play him false and take all he had. But at the same time, each inwardly plotted foul play to the other, saying in his mind, "If I can cheat my comrade, times will go well with me, and I shall have all these goods to myself." So, after planning this perfidy, one of them took food and, putting therein poison, brought it to his fellow. The other did the same, and they both ate of the poisoned mess, and they both died. Now, they had been sitting with the merchant, so when they left him and were long absent from him, he sought for tidings of them, and found the twain lying dead. Whereupon he knew that they were sharpers who had plotted to play him foul, but their foul play had recoiled upon themselves. So the merchant was preserved and took what they had. Then quoth the Sultan, "O Shahrazad, verily thou hast aroused me to all whereof I was negligent. So continue to edify me with these fables." Quoth she, "It hath reached me, O King, that men tell this tale of the thief and his monkey. A certain man had a monkey, and that man was a thief, who never entered any of the street markets of the city wherein he dwelt, but he made off with great profit. Now, it came to pass one day that he saw a man offering for sale worn clothes, and he went calling them in the market, but none bid for them, and all to whom he showed them refused to buy of him. Presently, the thief who had the monkey saw the man with the ragged clothes set them in a wrapper and sit down to rest for weariness. So he made the ape sport before him to catch his eye, and whilst he was busy gazing at it, stole the parcel from him. Then he took the ape and made off to a lonely place, where he opened the wrapper and, taking out the old clothes, folded them in a piece of costly stuff. Then he carried to another bazaar and exposed for sale together with what was therein, making it a condition that it should not be opened, and tempting the folk with the lowness of the price he had set on it. A certain man saw the wrapper, and its beauty pleased him, so he bought the parcel, and on these terms carried it home, doubting not that he had done well. When his wife saw it, she asked him, "What is this?" And he answered, "It is costly stuff, which I have bought at lowest price, meaning to sell it again and take the profit." Rejoined she, "O dupe, would this stuff be sold under its value unless it had been stolen? Dost thou not know that whoso buyeth aught without examining it falleth into error, and becometh like unto the weaver?" Quoth he, "And what is the story of the weaver?" And quoth she, "I have heard this tale of the foolish weaver." The foolish weaver. There was once in a certain village a weaver who had worked hard but could not earn his living save by overwork. Now, it chanced that one of the Richards of the neighbourhood made a marriage feast and invited the folk thereto. The weaver also was present and found the guests, who wore rich gear, served with delicate viands, and made much of by the housemaster for what he saw of their fine clothes. So he said in his mind, "If I change this my craft for another craft, easier to compass and better considered and more highly paid, I shall amass great store of money, and I shall buy splendid attire. So I may rise in rank and be exalted in men's eye, and become even with these." Presently he beheld one of the mountebanks, who was present at the feast, climbing up to the top of a high towering wall, and throwing himself down to the ground and alighting on his feet. Whereupon the weaver said to himself, "Needs must I do as this one hath done, for surely I shall not fail of it." So he arose and swarmed up the wall, and casting himself down, broke his neck against the ground, and died forthright. Now, I tell thee this, that thou mayest get thy living by what way thou knowest and thoroughly understandest, lest peradventure greed enter into thee, and thou lust after what is not of thy condition. Quoth the woman's husband, "Not every wise man is saved by his wisdom, nor is every fool lost by his folly. I have seen it happen to a skillful charmer, well versed in the ways of serpents, to be struck by the fangs of a snake and killed, and others prevail over serpents who had no skill in them and no knowledge of their ways." And he went contrary to his wife, and persisted in buying stolen goods below their value, till he fell under suspicion, and perished therefore, even as perished the sparrow in the tale of the Sparrow and the Peacock. There was once upon a time a sparrow that used every day to visit a certain king of the birds, and ceased not to wait upon him in the mornings, and not to leave him till the evenings, being the first to go in and the last to go out. One day a company of birds chanced to assemble on a high mountain, and one of them said to another, "Verily, we are waxed many, and many are the differences between us, and there is no help for it, but we have a king to look into our affairs. So shall we all be at the one, and of our differences will disappear." Thereupon up came that sparrow, and counselled them to choose for the king the peacock, that is, the prince he used to visit. So they chose the peacock to their king, and he, become their sovereign, bestowed largesse on them, and made the sparrow his secretary and prime minister. Now, The sparrow was wont betimes to quit his assiduous service in the presence and look into matters in general. So one day he absented himself at the usual time, whereat the peacock was sore troubled. And while things stood thus, he returned, and the peacock said to him, "What hath delayed thee? And thou the nearest to me of all my servants, and the dearest of all my dependents?" Replied the sparrow, "I have seen a thing which is doubtful to me, and whereat I am affrighted." Asked the peacock, "What was it thou sawest?" And the sparrow answered, "I saw a man set up a net hard by, peg down its pegs, strew grain in its midst, and withdraw afar off. And I sat watching what he would do, when behold, fate and fortune drove thither a crane and his wife, which fell into the midst of the net and began to cry out, whereupon the fowler rose up and took them. This troubled me, and such is the reason of my absence from thee, O King of the age. But never again will I abide in that nest for fear of the net." Rejoined the peacock, "Depart not thy dwelling, for against fate and lot forethought will avail thee naught." And the sparrow obeyed his bidding and said, "I will forthwith arm myself with patience and forbear to depart in obedience to the king." So he ceased, and taking care of himself, and carrying his food to his sovereign, who would eat what sufficed him, and after feeding drink his water, and dismiss the sparrow. Now one day, as he was looking into matters, lo and behold, he saw 2 sparrows fighting on the ground, and said in his mind, "How can I, who am the king's wazir, look on and see sparrows fighting in my neighbourhood? By Allah, I must make peace between them." So he flew down to reconcile them. But the fowler cast the net over the whole number, and the sparrow happened to be in their very midst. Then the fowler arose and took him and gave him to his comrade, saying, "Take care of him. I never saw fatter or finer." But the sparrow said to himself, "I have fallen into that which I feared, and none but the peacock inspired me with false confidence. It availed me naught to beware of the stroke of fate and fortune, since even he who taketh precaution may never flee from destiny. And how well said the poet in this poetry, 'Whatso is not to be shall never become, no wise, and that must come to pass. Yea, it shall come to pass at time ordained, and the ignoramus I shall cry, alas!'" Whereupon quoth the king, "O Shahrazad, recount me other of these tales." And quoth she, "I will do so during the coming night, if life be granted to thee by the king whom Allah bring to honour." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. So, dear friends, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Oh, it was quite a long one tonight, wasn't it? I wish you many blessings. I hope you all have a good day, or if it is night time for you already, that you have many beautiful and pleasant dreams. And I bid you from here in my little cozy space of reading 1001 Arabian Nights, a very good night. Thank you very, very much. Yes, Samant's going to be back, Anita, very, very soon. I'm not sure if she's going to be back this week, but she's going to be back very, very soon. And I'm taking over while she can't make it. So, dear friends, good night and see you tomorrow maybe. All right, thank you very much. Good night. Take care.